Welcome to the Semi-Annual Monitoring Report module. This module is presented by the Kentucky Environmental Compliance Assistance Program. The Environmental Compliance Assistance Program, or ECAP, exists to provide services that increase environmental knowledge and encourage positive behavioral changes. ECAP does this to improve regulatory compliance, achieve exceptional performance, and to enhance the quality of Kentucky's environment and communities. Semi-annual monitoring reports, or SAMRs, are a duty imposed upon all holders of air quality permits in Kentucky. Now, I'm sure your first question is, why report? Why the paperwork? We have a permit to follow, right? Clean air is too important to leave reviewing a source's operations and emissions to every 5 years during permit renewal or discovery through complaints and inspections. The SAMR requires evaluation and sworn certification signed by a responsible official to provide greater assurance and responsibility of a facility's compliance with air quality regulations. Kentucky regulations provide the definition of a responsible official, which outlines who in your facility or company should sign the SAMR. This is the certification statement which the responsible official signs. It essentially states that the information is true, accurate, and complete under penalty of law. False statements are punishable by fines or imprisonment. In the SAMR, the facility provides an actual summary of the parameters that were monitored. Common parameters include production rates, product usage, actual emission calculations, documentation that visual observations were made, and more. The SAMR summarizes the results of the facility's permit-required monitoring. The SAMR does not have a specific form due to the significant variances in facilities' permit requirements. The SAMR is due twice a year and must be submitted by January 30th and July 30th. The term postmarked is no longer used in regard to the SAMR. The January 30th report will include information for July 1st through December 31st of the previous year, and the July 31st report will include January 1st through June 31st of the current year. Failure to submit these in a timely manner is a violation. There are two ways to submit your SAMR to the Department for Environmental Protection. The first, and least preferred method, is by sending a hard copy in the mail. The form should be mailed to the regional office listed on your permit cover. If you are a Title V major source permit, a copy should be mailed to the EPA in Atlanta as well. You can find the regional office contact by following the information on this slide. The second and most preferred method is submitting your SAMR electronically using the EEC eForm submittal website. Again, if you are a Title V major source permit, you will also need to submit your SAMR to the EPA in Atlanta, and you can do this online through their submittal platform, SEDRI. Remember, all formats in which the reports are submitted must contain the required certification signature. In special cases, there are facilities that have 2 permits, or 2 locations, or have recently revised their permits. You should submit a SAMR for each permit that has been issued. Be sure to specify appropriate date ranges. If you were issued your permit in the last year, then you will need to certify compliance beginning with the issuance date of the permit. If the facility was recently issued a permit and is not yet operating, you will need to submit the SAMR, but make a statement regarding the construction or operational status. If you are operating some emission units and not others, be sure to indicate the units that are not operating or date ranges in which they were not operating. The Semi-Annual Monitoring Report is a detailed report of the parameters monitored. Like I said earlier, these parameters can include production rates, fuel use, emission rates each month, documentation of operating ranges observed, and ongoing calculations of actual emissions required by the permit. You will provide specific but partially summarized documentation with the SAMR. Again, for the SAMR, there is no standard format or form. The main thing that all submissions will need is a cover letter, which includes all of the important information that is provided on the cover page of your permit. This includes the facility identifiers, the name, AI number, permit number, address, and please remember to include the reporting period. In addition to the cover letter, you will add spreadsheets or tables to summarize your monitoring data. Please avoid using colors in your tables, since everything is scanned and becomes grayscale. The heading on your cover letter may look something like this, with the name, AI number, and address. Each monitoring requirement is found under the monitoring requirements of the permit for each emission unit. As you saw previously, there is some variability in how permits are written, so some requirements may be listed in the record-keeping or reporting sections. As far as detail that is required, clearly list out each emission point in the monitoring requirement, the frequency of the requirement, and then indicate whether the monitoring was performed with the required frequency and under the limits specified by the permit. Be sure to indicate any and all deviations from the permit monitoring requirements during that reporting period. List deviations with dates, exceedance values, and corrective actions taken in order to return to appropriate levels. Excess emissions are to be reported to your regional office. It is recommended to keep a log of the deviations and complications, as well as when you reported it and to whom throughout the year. This will help you comply with the regulations, as well as make it faster to complete the reports. Here is an example of the body of the cover letter, listing the monitoring requirements, the permit conditions, and certifying that all records and limits were maintained. If there are any deviations, you also need to state them in the cover letter. Please do not forget the certification statement and signature by a responsible official. You do not need to submit every scrap of data that you have. The SAMR is still just a summary. For example, you do not need to submit the daily or weekly visual emissions logs, but rather state that logs were maintained in accordance to the permit requirement and name any deviations from the permit conditions. Although the permit or your inspector may request actual logs, and in some cases, actual logs may be the best way to represent your data, since there is such great variability among sources and operations, it is hard to generalize completely. So some of the major points of today. Report clearly, logically, and in a format that is easily understandable. Be sure to include units to all values. Use common terms or terms that are in your permit. Avoid using jargons and specific acronyms. Be sure to include both the good and the bad on your reports, the operations that are in compliance and out of compliance. Out of compliance activities includes notices of violations the facility has received, malfunctions, emission exceedances, gaps in the record keeping, deviations from operations, and others like that. Again, please remember the SAMR is to be submitted by January 30th and July 30th. The January date is for July 1st through December 31st, and the July date is for January 1st through June 30th. For further information, the Kentucky Division for Air Quality has an entire page devoted to the permit-required reporting. On this page, DAQ provides an FAQ document on SAMRs, in addition to other valuable information. If you have specific questions regarding your requirements and reporting, please contact your regional office inspector. If you have any other questions or concerns, please contact the Environmental Compliance Assistance Program at 502-782-6189 or email us at envhelp@ky.gov.